now call the December 13th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Anna here.
Carlo here. Kipchinsky here.
Bukavich here.
Guzikowski.
Oldani here.
Seifert here.
Chandler here.
Okay. That will get us to approval of minutes of November 22nd, 2022. Everybody take a few moments to look that over. When you're satisfied, there's no discussion, errors, omissions, corrections, we'll look for a motion.
Seifert moves to approve the minutes of November 22nd, 2022.
Lork seconds. Roll call beginning with Christine.
Anna, I.
Carlo, aye. Kipchinsky, aye.
Lork, aye. Bukavich, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Oldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
And that will bring us to the review of recent Common Council actions. Carrie?
Council approved the following: an ordinance approving an amendment to the conditional use permit approved in ordinance 2946 to allow a contractor's shop, office, and contractor's yard on the property at 9840 South 27th Street. Also approved a resolution submitted by F Street OCLV LLC for the residences and clubhouse at Lakeshore Commons Condominium, an expandable condominium, first addendum plat affecting the property at 4005 East Lake Vista Parkway. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. That will get us to item 5, which is a review and discuss the report on the recent Board of Housing and Zoning Appeal actions, of which there were none. Item 6, review and discuss a recent report of the quarterly Parks and Recreation Commission actions, and there were none. So that will get us to 7, and old business, and that's review of site, building, and related plans, submitted by Michael Faber of Two Land LLC for a multi-tenant industrial building on the property at 9955 South 13th Street. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For those who do not recall, these plans were actually originally approved or reviewed at the May 25th, 2021 meeting. We did get updated plans today. Those are all at your stations, so those will be the ones that we are reviewing this evening. As a review, this is a multi-tenant industrial speculative building. It's approximately 191,000 square feet on Lot 1 of a CSM that was reviewed and approved and recorded for combining these two properties. As part of Creekside Corporate Park, it is subject to that same PUD. These are the existing conditions for the property, and we will have some discussion regarding the relocation of utilities that are there. This is the proposed site plan. This is updated, so this is what is at your stations right now, received this afternoon. The general layout from what was reviewed at the May 25th meeting is not changed. Some of the details, however, have changed. And these are the building details that are somewhat the same from what was reviewed. Stormwater plans for the site actually have been revised, and the future parking stalls that were questioned in the staff report are in fact included in the calculations for those plans. The elevations that we will discuss in a moment, those have been revised as well, and the landscape plans. Although the landscape plans do require a little bit more review by staff, we just didn't have enough time today. We did receive updated trash enclosure details. Those were missing from the original plans. However, there is one more revision that is required, and that is that chain link fence is not allowed as a gate material. Minimal, though. Minimum parking requirements we will discuss. Because this is reviewed under the previous code, we have previous code parking requirements. So we do have warehousing operations and general manufacturing. However, we do not have any information as to actual operations since it is a speculative building, and therefore we don't know if there will be, lots of employees or fewer employees, but the proposal includes future parking to accommodate what may be required once the tenant spaces are filled. So there are 167-ish, might be plus or minus, employee and visitor parking stalls that will be constructed with the building, and an additional 66 future stalls are included. This is separate and apart from the truck parking, which is in the docks on the north side of the building only, and there will be no outdoor storage save for those trucks. Couple of things to keep in mind. There are required revisions to the utilities, and therefore a development agreement will be required as well. Those utility plans that we received this afternoon have not been reviewed fully by the utilities, so there may be requirements that we don't know about right now. Just recommend that the applicant continue to work with the utility on what is required. As this is a multi-tenant speculative building, if there are going to be more than 2 tenants within the building, there will be a master sign plan required prior to any signage being installed on the building. Now, of course, if this is going to be a single tenant building, the signage will be reviewed for a single tenant. Turning to the elevations, starting on the east, which is the loading dock area, nothing really changed from the original plans on the northeast portion and the northwest portion. Slight difference to the entryway that is in the middle here, but nothing of significance that would cause any pause from staff. Now the elevations as we turn to the east and south have changed slightly in that the windows have been incorporated more so for what was considered future or knockout. In the previous plans, we do still have some that are shown as future or knockout, but there will be additional glazing on both the east and south portions of the building. So thank you very much to the applicant for making those revisions. The remaining materials have not changed, which are pre-painted, insulated precast concrete panels. We do have a requirement within the PUD for windows, awnings, arcades, and other features as integral parts of the facade, and obviously we do have those elements that are incorporated. And just as a reminder, any mechanical units and RTUs would have to be screened, and the applicant is aware of that. Not shown on here because we don't know what the requirements are going to be for the tenant. Landscaping, as previously mentioned, we do have revised plans. We do have additional plantings that have been identified on here, as well as replacement schedules for the few trees that would need to be removed in order to make the grading plans work for that southern parking. Everything is proposed to be replaced, however, in kind. There are some additional revisions, or there are some reviews that would be required by staff in order to determine whether future revisions or further revisions are going to be required. And just as a reminder, the berm on the south is not proposed to change in terms of elevation. It will be remaining, and it will remain landscaped. And that is per the PUD, that is also per the plans. We did not have any revisions to the lighting plans that were reviewed at the May meeting. So you'll notice that those are missing in your packets. The only things that were included in your packets, are the revised plans that we received for this particular review. Now, the one outstanding item that the Plan Commission does still need to make a determination on is whether or not there is an amendment to the PUD, and whether that is going to be required. That was mentioned in the staff report in the May report, as well as in this report, and that is something that will be required as part of this review. With regards to the parking, just note that there are quite a few extra parking stalls from what was required under the previous code and what would be allowed as a maximum under the current code. But again, without information about the tenants, these are speculative tenant spaces, speculative parking spaces, if you will. Couple of items to note in the landscape plan. There were some areas that were included for screening, including for that trash enclosure, additional plantings on the south for additional screening for the parking lot to those properties to the south. Additional landscaping was also installed on or presented on the west side of the building. That will be recognizing and including the requirements for the parking on the west side of the building in the future as well. This is on the east and south side, just showing the continuation of the berm, the plantings and the landscaping that will remain on the berm, and then the proposed plantings that will be around the new monument sign on the east. Bearing in mind all the reviews that have occurred to date and the revised plans that we have just discussed, there is a suggested motion for approval on the screen for Plan Commission consideration. Note that the suggested motion does not incorporate any requirement for the PUD amendment. If the Plan Commission determines that a PUD amendment is required, we will need to add another condition. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Before we move on, Mr. Faber, say a few words.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Mayor, Commissioners, my name is Mike Faber with Capstone Quadrangle and Creek Two Land LLC. That's our ownership entity, N17W24222 Riverwood Drive, Waukesha, 53188. We're pleased to have resolved the outstanding issues for stormwater approval by the staff and revised the windows for staff comments. I think most of the other issues have been addressed in what was the staff report that we originally received. The only thing I'll add is that I would appreciate being able to weigh in with our thoughts as you deliberate any of the matters that staff recommends you consider. The one I will mention now is the issue of the parking along the south and whether the conflict between the approved general development plan, which shows that the drive aisle is down the center of two parking, in other words, double loaded parking, but your ordinance for the PUD says that that is supposed to be a drive lane on the very south edge. My perspective on that is that the intent of the drive lane being on the very south edge is, for all intents and purposes, sufficiently addressed by the creation of the berm, which was done pursuant to a TIF from the city. And that landscaping is extremely dense, and the only thing I can conclude about what that PUD language was intended to cover was to not have headlights from vehicles turning in facing south towards the residential properties. The density of that berm and its landscaping now, which is all but impossible to pass through, effectively means that any cars pointing that direction, no lights will be shining through that berm and landscaping to the residential properties. So whether there's a formality of a need to change it, I don't have an opinion of addressing the PUD change. I'm fine with that if that's what you think is necessary to resolve the conflict, or if you think that the Plan Commission and I think Council approving the general development plan is sufficient enough to allow the parking as we've laid it out and as the general development plan shows. Absolutely happy to answer any.
Before we go on to commission, I see we have some citizens. Anybody wishing to speak or comment? Name and address, please.
Certainly. Yvonne Sierra, 1500 West Lois Lane. So our house is just to the south of the development. And yes, the berm is very thick. I guess I just want to clarify, is the reason for the change in the PUD, if possible change, is that because the road is now further south? I'm trying to understand why there would be an amendment.
Carrie, can you help with that one, please?
Sure. So in the existing PUD language and in the general development plan, the south side was broken up into two parcels, which have now been combined by CSM, showing two buildings, and within the actual text of the PUD, it has language with regard to what can be on the south. So there is a conflict with the language versus what the proposal is. It's really more of an interpretation by the Plan Commission as to whether the plans as presented propose enough of a conflict with what the PUD states, which is the southerly parking lot should be designed so that the aisle is closest to the berm and that no parking space is directly above the south property line. Now, taking into consideration that the PUD also required the berm that's on the south, it does appear that there is some conflict within both the PUD and with the plans. Really more of a cleanup, but it's a clarification that may prove to be necessary if and when something else goes into this PUD. So,
Well, the Department of Transportation stopped the noise wall, or whatever you want to call it, before Daniel. So honestly, this building is welcome because there is a gap. And if you all know that the texture of the freeway has been changed, it's very noisy. So because we don't have a wall, a noise wall to the west of us, I'm thinking that this building will really quiet things down. So honestly, I'm okay with it, and no one else is here, so they must be okay with it.
Thank you, Yvonne. Appreciate the input. Is there anyone else? Okay, we will go to the commission. Start off, Christine.
Yes, I think it's more clarification than question. So where is that, if you can show that truck entrance, that facility? Maybe like an overview. Okay, so this is the one to the north?
there are two potential locations for trucks to probably not enter but exit. South 13th Street and internal to the development, which this is Stern. So this Stern ends in a cul-de-sac. That's private.
Okay, so where is the entrance on, from 13th Street?
13th Street is over here. That's probably more going to be for your pedestrian vehicles rather than your trucks because the turning is probably not sufficient for trucks, but if needed, that area can probably be utilized for an exit for trucks. Well, I guess it would be an entry too if you're going south on 13th Street.
Okay, so that would be my concern. So if that would be an entrance going south, okay, and there's only 2 lanes, one in each direction on 13th Street. If for any reason, okay, the truck, even although you can make the turning movement, it can make an encroachment on the other lane. And for some reason, it can have any delays going north. It can also cause some delays on the closer signals to it. So it's something as a thought, more though as a concern. I just want to make sure that that was being looked at. So, go ahead.
Commissioner Hanna, at that point of that access to 13th, 13th is not 2 lanes, it's 4 lanes. It narrows down to the south, but our engineers tell us that truck turning movements can handle both southbound and northbound entrance and exit from that 13th Street access point.
Even if that's 2 lanes on each directions, wouldn't that take both lanes as well when they make the turning movement?
No, if they pull out and cross the 2 southbound lanes and they're going northbound, there's plenty of room for them.
In one
Just
lane?
like any access at an uncontrolled intersection, they would need to time any gaps in traffic before they pull out, just like any other uncontrolled intersection. It's our perception that if semi-trucks choose to exit there, 99.9% of them are going to be going north to the Ryan Road access point rather than south.
Yes.
And
The
most
interstate.
entrance semi-trucks will be coming in when somebody uses GPS, which most semi-truck drivers use some form of GPS-based navigation. It will guide them, in all likelihood, down through the Stern Street access point to the cul-de-sac.
Thank you.
Okay, Christine. Dawn?
Nothing additional from me, thank you.
Did you say that Stern Street is a private road?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I'm not familiar with the area, and I'm just looking at an aerial map, and it looks like Stern Street veers from this picture over to 13th and then back down. Is that correct?
That was originally intended. But when the park was being created by the park's developer, they abandoned taking it back out to 13th there, so it's not fully looped. And the utilities were connected through there, which is why we will need to remove the public portion, and Carrie addressed that we'll need to execute a development agreement, as we'll be modifying publicly owned sewer and water going through there in order to pull it back outside the footprint of the building. And we'll have to add a manhole there. The civil plans show that manhole being installed at the point so it's not underneath the building.
As far as the parking facing south, hearing the residents, it sounds like that berm is pretty dense. Whether or not there's concern about the headlights or parking south, I noticed that there's future parking on the west portion of the property. If that's required at all to be eliminated, instead of future parking, can that be the current parking and then eliminate some of that southerly parking?
Well, it's our view that the proposed future parking on both the south and the west is important to us as a future possibility in case we land either a manufacturer with a lot of employees or perhaps an R&D type facility or engineering in addition to whatever manufacturing or warehouse operations. Those tenants that have more employees will need to be able to accommodate their parking. My conversation with Community Development Director Seymour was, if we don't need them for sure day one, why not have more green space? So that's why we've shown it as dotted in for potential future, took it into account in the calculations for green space and so forth and landscaping, as if it was going to be paved. But if we don't need them, we'd prefer not to pave them, obviously.
And then I don't know the lay of the land over there, but from an aerial photo on Google Maps, it looks like the berm and the trees end at 15th Street. And then
Correct.
heading south, there's definitely homes on that side of the road. Is there any, I guess, concern about traffic circling the building or going in that direction? Is there trees there? Is there a berm there to protect the, I guess, homes on Settlers Way, South 15th Street?
There's a
Is
pretty
that all
big,
wooded?
The loop, 13th, direct, Lois Lane and Daniel Lane loop
I'm just-
around to there, but it doesn't go through from a business park.
Yeah, I'm just curious about there was talk about headlights, and that's why the tree and the berm is there, kind of to protect some of that. But is there gonna be overflow of truck lights or anything going where there are no trees?
I think the berm is fairly well established as far, it's been planted for, I don't know how many.
20 years.
20 plus years, so it's pretty thick in there, Greg.
At the west end, where there is no current berm, we are planning a small rain garden, and it will be planted with trees, as you can see on the landscape plan. And that area where there is no berm, there are no homes directly south of that. That's the DOT property.
And then the last thing, as far as I mean, it sounds like, yes, the plan is for truck traffic to possibly enter off of 13th into that driveway there versus going down Stern Street and potentially exiting there and going north to the freeway entrance. I feel like there's always contention about southerly truck traffic on 13th Street, even going down towards Oakwood and everything. Is there any way that there can be signage as to no right turns or engineering plans to prevent trucks from turning south onto 13th Street?
Well, we would be opposed to no right turn at all, because our hope would be that it would be plenty of Oak Creek residents that would be working at the facility, and they'd certainly want to go south. There really isn't, and I understand your lack of familiarity with the area. I think Alderman Guzikowski might attest. There's no logical reason why, unless they're lost, why a semi-truck would want to go south on 13th there, out of this facility. They're looking to get back on the freeway, and they're significantly more expedient access is to go north to Ryan Road.
You would think that, but it's not the case. Believe me, I wrestle with complaints about that from property directly to the east all the time, to the point we're engaging the county in calming methods to stop those trucks from going. Again, I'm not trying to say how they do it or why they do it, but it is a problem, and I really don't care what Peter Harris.
Well, I know Oakwood truck traffic's not allowed, but that doesn't stop the trucks from driving down it. Right. So if there's any way to prevent that proactively, I'd be all for it.
If there's a possibility of a sign that no semi-trucks right turn, we'd support that idea.
Sorry, but on Oakwood Road, there is plenty of signs, yet they are still going there. So signs don't really enforce it.
But anyways, Greg, you
Okay,
still have
and
it.
that was it. Thank you.
Okay. Chris?
Had no questions.
Don?
No questions.
Fred?
Yeah, I have a couple. How many trucks on a daily usage do you think will be using the facility?
Commissioner, there isn't any way for me to address that, since it's a speculative building and we don't know what kind of tenants will attract. I will tell you, given the market conditions, I'd give probably a 70% likelihood that it would be a single tenant taking the whole building, maybe 28, 29% two tenants, and a very low, 1% chance that it'd be three tenants. And manufacturing seems to have increased in its market demand in the past 6 months. That would suggest, manufacturing has less semi-truck traffic and more auto traffic than e-commerce or distribution users. It is in proximity to the freeway, so although we certainly would be opposed to the idea of semi-truck traffic going down streets that are essentially of a residential character. And I absolutely respect the mayor's comment about the tenant off to the east having semi-trucks go south. It makes no sense to me why they would do that, but we've seen tenants take this much space, anywhere from 1 or 2 trucks a day to 10 or 20.
13th Street is a busy street. Residents trying to get out in the morning or coming in the evening are having a little problem once in a while because of Amazon and their flow of traffic. So I was just curious of what potential we would be adding, because 13th Street is a very active street. Just curious.
That would be my best guess, somewhere between 2 and, say, 15 per day.
Well, thank you.
1 or 2 per hour. We just sold the building that we had developed immediately to the north of this property, and I would guess that over the 20 years that we owned that building, those tenants, which there was a variety, it wasn't the same tenant the whole time, varied between 1 or 2 trucks, and probably at its peak when it was FedEx, there were the little delivery vans. Those were 30 or 40 per day, because they had half of that building. But actual semi-trucks, probably at its maximum, it was 10 or 12
Thank you.
certainly.
Fred? Honestly?
I do have a question. Carrie, I may have missed this for the public water main as well as the sewer. Were there any actions required or revised for those two items?
So there were revised plans that we received this today. The utility has not been able to review those to provide comments yet. So whatever is required by the utility will have to be incorporated into the plans. There will have to be a development agreement for the installation of the new utilities, the removal of the present utilities, so that will still need to be coordinated.
Thank you.
Okay. Vaughn, would you like to come back up? Question?
Yvonne Sierra, 1500 West Lois Lane. I just wanted to confirm, so one of the commissioners had mentioned, I think it was Gregory Lorek, you had mentioned that the traffic wrapping around the building. So am I correct in just saying that's just car traffic, or is there any proposed truck traffic?
Should be, but it's not to say there's nobody gonna be out there policing. So
Right, right,
So
so-
that can become a concern, and
It is a tight angle. It's a tight angle, isn't it?
it's a very tight angle, and I'm not a truck driver. I don't think I'd want to do it, but you know, that's my question.
All right.
Person up's gonna be Chief Havey, if you don't mind. Talk about where fire sits.
Okay. Yeah, so, I mean, living on the south side, I would prefer there not be any truck traffic. I think that was part of the PUD, in that it was just going to be employee traffic and employee parking. And I would just, don't want to
I do
hear.
think it's designed that way.
Yes, yes.
And as I was sitting here, I kind of thought the same thing, like we just cut off the road, but that's really a concern for the fire. So that we need that connectivity usually. I'll let Chief
Right,
expand
okay.
on
Well, let it be said, Yvonne does not want truck traffic. Honestly, I do not. I've been there since 1992, and I really don't want, I have got the freeway, which is a lot different when I first moved in. The freeway is a lot noisier. As you well know, there's many more lanes. And I understand that I, chose to live there, but things are changing. And if I can prevent truck traffic from coming and riding out while I'm having a little picnic outside and seeing all the noise and all that, and I would appreciate it.
I wouldn't suspect they would, but again, it's,
I will address that comment if that's all right. Even though we have not submitted a sign plan for approval, it will be our intent, even without Yvonne making the comment, that we would have wayfinding signs at the entrances down into the auto parking, no semi-trucks. That's what we do at all of our buildings. We don't want the semi-trucks driving through the auto parking lot.
can I have Chief Havey up? Just kind of talk about any fire concerns and connectivity around the building as I brought up, Mike.
Excuse me, but, so I'm gonna reflect this first as a resident, Michael Havey, 1321 West Lois Lane. So like Yvonne, I've lived in the neighborhood, I've been there since 1975. So historically, that site, was planned to be a business site for years. So it is not a surprise that there is a proposed site coming on there. The traffic concerns, I will tell you, I experience that every day. The business to the east that you spoke about on 13th Street, much less semi-traffic, it's just employee traffic. I would say that most of the neighborhoods have been accustomed to what we see on the development side of it. So I'm not opposed to it as a resident. It's an expected proposed business that was going to be, at some point in time, there was something going to be there. Now I'll switch gears. Mike Havey, Assistant Chief, Oak Creek Fire. As far as the access points, it's basically a code requirement, 20-foot width clearance with access around a building, and that's something that'll be required. So that's for emergency traffic only. Again, the truck traffic, designated areas where the loading docks are, typically that is where we would anticipate that those vehicles, they'll be there. If someone does make that turnaround and go around the building, it might be the last time they would make that choice. Anything else fire related, I can answer any questions if you need anything else.
Are there any concerns from fire with anything else regarding the building?
Not specifically. So, obviously code compliance with suppression systems, alarm systems, access seems, doesn't seem to be an issue from where, we do have that private road, Stern Street, that comes in, but we have access through that. There's water supply on that side as well. Yes.
It goes all the way.
Yeah, so that those will need to be in place along with on the private side for their suppression systems. They'll need to supply that as well. All right.
And thank you. And again, I really want to point out, thank you very much for differentiating yourself as a citizen and as an assistant chief. That's really quite a big deal. And sometimes, lines get blurred, but I really appreciate you making that effort.
It's not often I get to speak as a resident there, so
That's true.
I can't let Yvonne steal all the thunder.
There you go.
Very good, Mike. Thank you. So I guess I kind of got it. Really, the building itself, I'm okay with. I'm not super familiar with the berm, but as Mike said and Yvonne said, it's been there quite a while. Chris said about 20 years. It's well established. Plus the additional plantings that'll go in there will help. I'm definitely on Yvonne's side with how can we eliminate that truck parking. I think if it's employee parking, we'll be okay. I get signs. It's publicly, I don't always obey the signs either. The way, where you should go and the arrows on which way you should drive in a parking lot. But I do think it's a tight turning radius. It would be tough. And I know this is a really huge ask, but if there was a way, what's the one, Stern Street, and what's the other street? That comes off 13th there. And I know we're not going to rework that. We can't stop them from going south. We're trying to deter the trucks to make sure, just cattle them to the north. I'd love to see something like that because we are having just a ton of complaints on 13th about not only the trucks going there, down 13th. Oakwood's another thing, but it's not on our agenda. But the trucks actually queuing up on 13th and parking in front of residences is becoming a really large problem. And we're working with the county, and Ashley knows that all too well. We're doing the best we can to try to eliminate that, make that go away. So if we can brainstorm with staff on any of these entrances, to get them calming and go north. It's my hope these are all going to be Oak Creek residents working in these businesses as well. Again, we don't know what the truck traffic will be. Obviously, going to have deliveries of trash pickup and goods that are going to be manufactured there. But it's impossible to say what that count's going to be. So, other than that, I think it's a pretty nice looking building. Appreciate the work the boys and the things that went on. I know the utilities need some work there. It's been a little bit of a challenging property. But I think it's a nice looking business, well proposed. And I think more importantly, it's not loaded with docks. There's docks there, an adequate number, but it's not grossly over littered with docks. Mr. Favor?
Mayor, I would, this isn't a guarantee, of course, but the fact that this building's destination comes off of Helm and Stern, if for some reason semi-trucks intending to come to this building arrived earlier than they should, the building isn't open yet, the tenant isn't ready to receive anything, I suspect that there isn't a guard shack like there is over at Amazon that prevents them from significant queuing, and that's why I think they queue out on 13th. Here, they can come all the way to the building. They don't have to wait out on 13th. And even if they wanted to pull over before that, there's space, which does happen with the other tenants in this park, for them to sit and wait and queue on Helmuth and Stern rather than out on 13th. I think that's, if anything, probably a help, that it shouldn't contribute to the problem you identified of people, semi-trucks queuing out on 13th in front of the two residences to our north here.
I think that's a valid point. I do agree with you. I don't drive truck or anything like that. I do think, that more southerly entrance is going to be a tough one for trucks to get out of. It's kind of tricky to turn around there.
Mr.
No.
Mayor, I'm not sure that the microphone is
Oh.
picking up all your comments.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's a valid point about the queuing on Helm and what have you. That southerly entrance, I don't want to say trucks won't go there. It looks like a tight turning radius to get that way. You'd probably make that mistake once and not do it again, because it would be just so much easier to go back the way you came in. Other than that, but again, I think I'd be very conscious. You could work with staff, particularly on those just the entrance points. Anything we can do to get traffic going north to Ryan Road where they belong is appreciated, because it's an odd situation, because 13th is a truck route by the county, and yet we're trying to minimize the truck route with trucks. So a little tough, but again, nothing wrong with being a truck route. We just prefer you to go north.
Understood. Happy to cooperate.
Any further questions, comments? Carrie, is there anything we missed?
The Plan Commission still needs to make a determination as to whether or not the PUD needs to be amended.
So once again, do you need, everybody kind of heard why that PUD was kind of in play there? Parking. I actually don't think the additional parking hurts, given the berm situation. Kind of like the center drive aisle myself. I know we were going to push it as far south as we could and point the headlights through, but again, I'm not totally familiar with it, so based on Yvonne's observation and Chris's of the berm, I guess I'm okay kind of with southern.
The issue is whether or not the PUD needs to be amended for the language that's included in there, though. Because the PUD seems to be the conflict.
So
It's not necessarily that the plans are going to be
So-
at issue, it's the fact that they conflict with the PUD slightly. And I'm not saying that the PUD is right or wrong, I'm just saying that
Right.
conflict
but seeing
exists.
as we wrote the PUD, what gives us the most flexibility going into the future? Because we don't know what this building is.
Amending the PUD just cleans it up.
Would go to amend. It would be my suggestion. Because again, this building's gonna have many life forms. Could be one large tenant, it could be multiple tenants. I think we should, it's prudent to keep the flexibility there for what life might bring to it. It could be a manufacturer, it could be something that really a lot less intense that way.
I do have a question for the applicant in regards to those potential changes. So let's say the PUD is not changed. What would happen to that area? Would it just, you wouldn't use it as a parking stall?
No, I don't think it necessarily would imply changing the plan or what we build. It would mean that the city would have a situation where you approved a PUD that said something different, but you also approved a general development plan that shows it as I'm proposing it. So you have a conflict. If you approve our requested Plan Commission approval tonight, the city would be living with language that said this is okay on one hand and not okay on another hand. And so I think Planner Papelbon's suggestion, if I can kind of read between the lines, is you would be smart to change the PUD to eliminate that reference to the drive aisle being closest to the berm. That way, it's consistent with what we've proposed, and it would be then consistent with the general development plan that you already approved.
Let me ask that differently. So if the PUD doesn't change, what would have to change on site?
If you approve our request, nothing has to change on site. You just have an internal language conflict with two different things that you've approved.
So here, the scenario would be, and I'm not suggesting that this is what should happen. The scenario would be if the Plan Commission approves the plans, we have this conflict, and the conflict remains. If the Plan Commission denies the plans, then the plans would have to be revised to be in conformance with the PUD as written. So those would be the two actual scenarios. Since we have a couple of conflicts in the PUD, however, cleaning it up just means that we would not have any conflict with these plans if the Plan Commission wishes to approve them, and we wouldn't have any conflict internal to that PUD. So anybody reading that PUD would be clear what the requirements are and what's allowed. We're just a little bit out of order with regard to how we're reviewing it.
Thank you.
So Carrie, what's the downside of amending the PUD? Because obviously it's not what was originally intended.
Downside of amending the PUD is that it has to go to a hearing process. So we have to go through the amendment process. It delays things a little bit, but if we get things done in the winter, hopefully it won't necessarily delay the plans for construction.
What about future plans, the original intent behind that PUD? Is there any downside there?
Honestly, if we looked at the PUD and we only amended the things that were in conflict, it wouldn't necessarily change anything else. We would be given the opportunity to recognize what's already happened in that PUD and establish what the requirements are moving forward.
Okay. Understood. Thanks.
So would your thought be that if they're so motivated that the Plan Commission approves the plans subject to changing the PUD?
You can do that, yep.
Yeah, that makes sense, actually.
Okay. Any further questions, discussions, particularly concerning
And it has to be part of the motion, Carrie?
It does, and I will update that language for you on the fly.
I'll leave you alone.
I think my architect who drove an hour and a half is probably going to be disappointed you didn't ask any architectural questions.
If you want to come up, I can. Right side. It's not snowing yet. Say night.
Okay, if there are no objections, the condition number 9 that was just added is that an amendment to the plan unit development is reviewed and approved by the Common Council prior to submission of permit applications.
Okay. With that, if there's no further discussions or questions, motion please on 7A.
Oldani moves that the Plan Commission approves the site and building plans submitted by Michael Faber, Creek 2 Land LLC for the property at 9955 South 13th Street with the following conditions.
And Commissioner Oldani, if I can just interrupt before you start, if you could read off the screen because the motion was slightly changed with the conditions based on the plans that we received this afternoon.
Okay, 1, that all relevant code requirements are in effect. 2, that the plans are revised to incorporate staff comments regarding stormwater utility locations and details, setbacks, and retaining walls. 3, that the plans are revised to include locations for all mechanicals, transformers, and utilities, all mechanical equipment, transformers, and utility boxes, ground building, and rooftop shall be screened from view. 4, that all light sources are shielded and directed downward, that the color temperature of the fixture are limited to a maximum of 3,500 kelvins, and the light source adjacent to the single-family residential areas are shielded on the side of the fixture adjacent to the residential area. 5, that the landscape plans are revised and resubmitted for review and approval by the Director of Community Development prior to the submission of permit applications. 6, that the trash enclosure gates are revised to a non-chain link and code-compliant material. 7, that a detailed master sign plan is reviewed and approved by the Plan Commission prior to submission of sign permit applications. 8, that all detailed revised plans are submitted in digital format to the Department of Community Development prior to submission of permit applications. And 9, that an amendment to the plan unit development is reviewed and approved by the Common Council prior to submission of permit applications.
Guzikowski will second.
And I have one revision, and that is just to clarify that the master sign plan would be required for tenants in excess of 2 for the building. That's just code compliance, though.
Okay, as stated.
I'll wordsmith that, but
Thank
that's
you.
really the intent.
All right.
Second.
Okay, roll call, beginning with Dawn.
Grillo, aye. Shinsky, aye.
Lorick, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Goldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
And I.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great holiday.
You too.
That will get us to 8A, new business, and that is consideration of a temporary use permit submitted by Mark McLean, One Headlight Power Sports, LLC, doing business as House of Harley Davidson for a temporary operation of a motorcycle training course in the Kohler's parking lot located at 9725 South 13th. Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This should look pretty familiar. We've received the temporary use permit for this particular business every year since 2018, and there have been no complaints received to date. But just to kind of review what the request is, it's a temporary use permit in the Kohler's parking lot to allow for a state-approved motorcycle training course, and it would be held essentially between March and November. And while it does say from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., that's really during the longest period, so during the summer months. Obviously, lighting being restricted during the cooler times of the year probably goes till about dusk. The 7 days per week just is an allowance for both the training courses that are typically scheduled Wednesdays through Sundays, allows for some inclement weather changes, as well as for some retesting. There are 2 signs that are requested on the storage container. It is a shipping container that has all of the materials. They do store the motorcycles on site in that container. And that has been part of the request since 2018. And while the current code only allows for 1 temporary sign per property, because this is as part of a temporary use permit approved by the Plan Commission, if you so choose to approve it, the staff is fine with both of them being on the shipping container because that's something that's been established in the past. There will be permits required for that, however. Again, we've not received any complaints for the proposal. It's been in operation maybe twice a year when they first started, but every year since 2018. And with that in mind, there is a suggested motion on the screen for Plan Commission consideration. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Jocelyn, you want to start us off?
No questions, thank you.
Fred?
No questions.
Don?
No questions.
Chris?
Repeat from last year. No question.
Greg?
No questions.
Ashley?
No questions.
Dawn?
Nothing for me. Nothing here.
No, nothing from me. Boy, you're getting at it early this year, but good for you. It's a really worthwhile program if you've ever been through it, and I've actually watched. I've been there on a Saturday, driving by. It's really well done, well contained. It actually provides a great service to all the riders and motor vehicles alike. So, if there's nothing further. Motion on 8A, please.
Clerk moves to approve the temporary use permit request submitted by Mark McLean, One Headlight Power Sports LLC, doing business as House of Harley Davidson for the operation of a motorcycle operator training site on the property at 9725 South 13th Street with the following conditions. Number one, that all relevant code requirements remain in effect. Number two, that all course activities shall be located within the south portion of the parking lots as per the proposed map. 3, that operations related to the training course be limited to between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. Monday through Sunday. 4, that there shall be one cargo container for the temporary storage of the course equipment and materials within the south portion of the parking lot as per the proposed map. The cargo container shall be removed within 7 days of the last training course. 5, that signage for the operation is limited to 2 4x8 32 square foot each temporary signs on the cargo container. And 6, that the temporary use permit shall be valid between March 21st, 2023 and November 9th, 2023.
Guzekowski, a second.
Roll call, beginning with Ashley.
Shinsky, aye.
Lorick, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Aldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Anna, I.
Grillo, aye.
Okay, that's gonna get us to adjournment. Only one announcement, we lit the square. So, the holiday season has begun in Drexeltown Square. Please take some time and walk the square and enjoy the lights. They will be up, remaining through the holidays. Carrie, is this it for us for the year?
This is your final meeting of the year. We will see you in January 2023. Thank you for your service this year.
So I just want to take this moment to wish all the commissioners happy holidays. And I appreciate all the hard work you did this year. I can't believe it came and went that fast, but greatly appreciate it. We've done some stuff here and we've been busy. Believe me, I talked to everybody in the county. Rarely does our plan commission meet as consistent as we do every 2 weeks. Which means we're busy and our staff's even busier. So at this time, I want to thank the staff as well. Congratulate Tom. Tom is our new IT director for the city. So that just happened at the last council meeting. And then, of course, Carrie, outstanding job this year. Excellent, without a doubt. To you and everybody else behind the scenes there. I know Jack's moved on, but Doug and everybody in the department, thank them on our behalf for us. Okay, with that, motion for adjournment.
Grillo moves to adjourn at 7 o'clock.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call, Greg.
Lorick, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Aldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Anna, I.
Grillo, aye. Shinsky, aye.
Okay, see y'all in the new year.